That is what happened, though. And that's why I think that there is a hopeful story to tell. I will just kind of break the ice. You already know, right? We listened to Amy just now. When we listened, you know about woke. We heard the free speech being absolutely destroyed. We know about, you lived communism now for several years, and we could talk about how it is communism light, it is communism modified, but you may not know why. You may not know why. Of course, there's the easy answer. Communists do this. That's it. Communists want to take over the world and make the whole place communist. Canada is a place in the world. Therefore, communists come after Canada. But there's actually a kind of a bigger plan, and it ties to Mark Carney a little bit. Things have not, this isn't the 60s anymore, right? Or the 50s or whatever. Communism's over, guys. You know, don't be Joseph McCarthy, the Red Scare. Communism is not the same monster that it was in the 20th century. We're in the 21st century now. We have a 21st century communism. And what does it look like? It looks like the People's Republic of China. It doesn't look like the People's Republic of China under Mao Zedong, who died in 1976, leaving China in shambles, in ruin, economic devastation that is only rivaled by Canada today. That's the bend over part of the elbow drop. I learned something today. It's a different communism that was forged by his not immediate but ultimate successor, Deng Xiaoping, who was one of his ministers, Mao's ministers in his government. And Deng Xiaoping had this new idea because he ultimately had to be a pragmatist because Mao broke everything so badly and made such a mess of things. So he came up with this new idea called it open up. Not elbows up, open up. And we're going to open up a market within China. It's not real. That's fake news. It's not a real market. And this is what you've got to understand. The slogan was one country, two systems. And so the trick, the lie, there's always a lie, right? A trick. They use language wrong. One country, two systems. Well, what are the two systems? Well, communism is one of them, obviously, because it's communist China. People's Republic, led by the CCP. If you forgot what the one of those C's is, it's Communist Party China, right? So it's communism, but what's the other system? And what they want people to believe is that it's a little bit of capitalism.
Yes. Right.
No, it is fascism.
Right.
It is actually National Socialism. It is actually what they imported was the model that was installed in Nazi Germany in 1937 in what they called their shareholder law, which was going to then repurpose shareholder corporations into a new model that is called stakeholder economy. Yeah, ESG. So Mr. Carney is a stakeholderist. He is one of the biggest stakeholderists in the world. The stakeholder model was first implemented legally anywhere in the world in 1937 in Nazi Germany, and its primary purpose was to make the folk, which is the people in the communist countries, the folk and National Socialism in Germany, and the party, the government, stakeholders in everything that happens. So everything is being done in the name of the people, everything is being done in the name of the government, and rather than looking to the shareholders that are invested in the company to make the decisions in the shareholder meeting, you look instead to the stakeholders. Well, you can't have all the people come to every shareholder meeting or stakeholder meeting. You're a stakeholder in whatever company because that company produces things you might buy, it uses resources you might otherwise use, it makes pollution that you might otherwise encounter. Everybody's a stakeholder. Well, you can't have that, so you're going to have experts. You're going to bring in all the experts to be the stakeholders. You know, all these people that go to the Davos meeting at the World Economic Forum, these big wigs like Chrystia Freeland, she's one of these stakeholder people. They know better, and they're the ones who are going to tell everybody how everything works for you, of course, and for you. But of course, that's not what it's really about. It's about consolidating power. So the way that this model works in practice in China is because it's communist, the state owns all the land, the state owns all of the raw materials, the state owns the heavy capital. But if you want to run a corporation, according to what the state says the stakeholders need, and you match what they say, they're your primary decision makers, then you can make as much money running the corporation for the benefit of the state as you want. One country, two systems. And the two systems are not, as has been widely spread as a lie throughout the West, that they opened up some capitalism in China. They opened up a national socialist fascist model of economics that they then used to bait Western countries into getting economically dependent on them with. That's what has actually happened. So the main thing, other than the woke insanity we've been hearing about that you guys face here in Canada, is the environmental policy. Yeah. Net zero, absolute zero, Trudeau mania, whatever, all these things. We're Club of Rome, we could get into all the nitty-gritties, and Pierre Trudeau was really very heavily responsible for this. The Liberal Party, since Pierre Trudeau, has been the driver of this. One of the lead drivers in the world and was able to activate this entire plan was, in fact, Pierre Trudeau's Liberal Party. Another joke that works up here, by the way, is when I say Pierre Trudeau, I say, Justin's dad. Every time. It's really weird. Every time. I'm going to miss the Trudeau jokes forever. So easy. So this is actually what you guys are facing. What is the purpose of net zero? Is it environmental? No. It is to make your country dirt poor. It is to make sure that China does not have to economically decline but can rise meteorically while Western countries kill themselves economically. That's why. Why? What's their rationale? China's rising anyway. Therefore, eventually they're going to try to claim dominance over the entire world. Therefore, when they do, there might be a giant world war to try to stop them if it goes to that, because obviously there's such good actors in the world. Therefore, if we just cut off our own nuts, we won't fight. There'll be no war. That's literally the plan. What does net zero mean in Canada? I don't know if you guys here on this part of the country know, but it's cold here. And in the winter, it's dark a lot. It means starving to death while you freeze in the dark. That's what net zero means in practice in a province like Alberta or Saskatchewan or Manitoba. Any of the really cold ones. I don't even know what the ones in north are called. Don't go there. Nobody goes there. No man's land. The Great White North. So that's what you guys have elected, and that's what you guys have to do. So I said I was going to give a sermon, and I don't want to just ramble about the fact that Chinese 21st century communism that will pretend to be capitalist because it's actually doing a fascist fake economy is what you're facing. I want to tell you what you guys are going to do about it, and I want to bring you some hope. And that when I'm in a place where this is funny because a lot of you probably know I'm not religious. Just put it on the table. Let's just be honest. I'm not religious. But when I'm really looking for hope and I don't know where else to look, there are a lot of stories in a book called the Bible that I think about a lot. And this is one of those stories. So what have you guys elected? If I said that you guys elected, Chairman Carney or whatever, you'd laugh. But if I told you that you've elected Pharaoh, maybe it's a little more clear. The Liberal Party is like Pharaoh. This is like Book of Exodus stuff. Right. So we're in the Torah. I know that Christians don't normally recognize this part of the story as Torah. Catholics call it the Pentateuch. It's the first 5 books of the Bible. Those are Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, which is really weirdly named. It's not about math, it turns out. I looked. And Deuteronomy. And in Exodus, in Genesis, you have the creation of everything, and then you have the establishment of the covenant between Israel and God. And then in Exodus, you have this problem that the covenantal people, the Jews, the Israelites, have been enslaved by the Egyptians under Pharaoh. And so there's this moment in this story where God tells Moses to go talk to Pharaoh, set my people free. Go stand up to him. And Moses is like, okay, a little ad-lib on this, by the way. And so God says, by the way, you need to go talk to Pharaoh, but I'm going to harden his heart against you. And so what do you think happens? Moses goes talks to Pharaoh. Think Pharaoh took it well? No, not so much. Wasn't interested, hardened heart. So this is one of those really deep theological free will debates about whether or not God intervenes. He hardened the heart of Pharaoh so that he wouldn't hear Moses out and give the Israelites their freedom. Why on earth would that happen? This is one of those things where if you don't spend some time, A, reading the whole story, the whole Torah in this case, we don't really understand what the point of that is until we get through Numbers. And B, if you don't really kind of dig in and think about it, you don't understand what it's about. Well, the Jewish interpretation of this, which is usually also the Christian interpretation of this, slightly different how it's given, is that the reason that God hardened the heart of Pharaoh is because it had to be abundantly clear to the Israelites that the reason that they were escaping slavery was because of the provision of God.
Right.
God's power and divinity had to be clearly visible to these people. Because the deal, when you get to the book of Numbers, the end of the book of Numbers, is that the only people who get to go into the promised land, which was promised when they were in slavery, which is the land of Canaan, the only people who get to go to Canaan are people who are faithful, who maintain faith and believe. The whole point of a big section of the book of Numbers, which could be called, as Charlie Kirk says all the time, wandering in the wilderness. You know, there's 40 years in the desert, right? It's a long ride. The whole point is that God has given miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle to these people, and they're complaining. And they say that they want to go back to slavery. We had cucumbers in slavery in Egypt. All we have here is this perfect manna from heaven to eat that fell as a miracle from a God who apparently has forsaken us because we haven't found Canaan yet. And so God's like, I'm not letting you in because you're a bunch of complainers. And that's where you learn that the only people he's letting into the promised land are the ones who are actually faithful. Now, I remind you that Israel itself in Hebrew means something. It is a word. It's not just the name of a country. It is a word. It means we who wrestle with God. And it means that people are wrestling with, is God really there? And faith is saying, I have no idea, but yes. Okay? And so way back in the situation where the heart was hardened, this was a sign. This is one of the two reasons that theologians give for why God would harden Pharaoh's heart, is that the Israelites in bondage needed a sign at the time that it is the sovereignty of God that's going to set them free, so that they would have faith, so that they could make the journey, so that they could maintain their faith, so that they could deserve the promised land, which is the land of the covenant in the first place, which requires faith to have. The other reason is because God is supposedly just. This is the part where you can get excited if it's an applicable metaphor. And the Egyptians needed to be punished, and God had 10 plagues to bring them, and so justice had to be served, and that required Pharaoh to deny Moses. So, okay, what in the world does that have to do with anything? How is this hopeful? Where did America from the future go? Well, we're a little further in the story, by the way. If you wonder where we are, Moses has now come down from Mount Sinai. He's been with the burning bush. He's got the 10 commandments. That's a Mel Brooks joke. I've seen history. One of the best scenes in movie history. He comes down every he's 15, drops a tablet, smashes it. 10 commandments. Classic. He comes down. Well, the part of the story that we're in America is that they made this calf. They've gone off and made the calf. They followed, President Trump, and now they're worshiping some calf. Everybody's gone crazy. I don't know if you've seen what's going on down there. Republicans have gone a little bit feral. They've lost their minds a bit. So it's the golden calf part of the story. If you know what happens next when Moses finds out about the calf, it's not that good. We'll see how this goes. Aaron lies to him. It's really the funniest childish thing ever. Where did this calf come from? Oh, we took all the gold, we put it in the fire, and this calf just came out. It's like a toddler. So this is where we are. We're in a different part of the story, but where are you? You're in the part of the story with the hardened heart. What do I mean? Canadians voted to put Pharaoh back in power. Right. Yeah. The Liberal Party, what do you got, 3 terms now in a row or something like that? 4? This is 4, right? So you've had 3 and this is 4? Yeah. Or is this 4 or 5? I don't know. That's way too many. Yeah. Plus or minus 1. Yes. Like Aiden said. So you're in that position now where you have to see things with eyes of faith to get through this, is what my point is. That's right. You have to believe that it is actually possible to bear the difficulties and iniquities that you're about to be visited under this government. Because frankly, as I said at the beginning, the reason that you have Carney is because they evoked the specter of Orange Man and Canadians were here. Canadians, not all of you obviously, but way too many Canadians aren't ready to leave that situation. We found ourselves in this position in 2020 in the United States. Like I said, we're a little bit in the future. We found ourselves in this situation in 2020, and I went to an event with Charlie Kirk, and I got asked, why, if this is a very religious event, obviously, if God is sovereign, why do we have Biden? So somebody has Christ not faith at the event with like Charlie Kirk and me and Eric Metaxas or something like that, and I'm like, all right, I have an answer for this, believe it or not. It's because Americans haven't seen what we're dealing with yet. We don't understand the fullness of the problem that we are dealing with. So as much as I know this might get a boo or whatever, I don't know, from a distance, like Pierre Poilievre, I actually learned to say his name. Yeah, right? As much as I generally like the guy, I watched him run a contained campaign. And I see Canadians who aren't ready for it. And that they wanted something different. So you would have ended up with a containment prime minister. You're going to have to suffer some plagues, to speak in the metaphor, and your job, which is what Amy just said too, your job is going to be to use these circumstances to wake up more Canadians, to get them to understand the circumstances that they're in.
Yes. Yep.
And it's also going to be humble, to be faithful, which means you don't get to throw your principles in the river like the feral Republicans in the United States are doing right now. They lost their minds. You don't get to do that. You have to keep the faith. You have to keep your principles. You have to keep righteousness. Leviticus is all about the law and keeping the law. You've got to keep those things going forward. So you actually are in this weird situation where you have the opportunity of a lifetime to go through an insane amount of discomfort to bring the true awakening that Canada needs to become the free country that's in the middle, or at the end of particularly, of your national anthem, which is beautiful. As an American, I always laugh, especially with the circumstances that it begins with, oh, Canada. But that's what this is about. This is what you've got to do. You're going to face really bad woke policy. You're going to face crazy threats to free speech. You're going to face lots of iniquities and injustices. And you're going to have to stand in faith. You're going to have to know exactly what it means not to be content to live as a coward. To say the things that you have to say, tell the things that you have to say, because you have been given the conditions for a true mass awakening of Canada that it simply wasn't ready for this year and last year, over the last 12 months.
Hallelujah.
And this is an incredible challenge, an incredible opportunity. And I don't know if you've read your Bible, but a lot of the stories when people have hard jobs, or a lot of stories where people have got jobs for God aren't really easy. They get swallowed by whales and stuff. So you're going to have to, I guess, put your elbows up and get it done. Is that a hockey reference? What the hell is that? So I think that that's where you are, and I think that that's actually the hope. The hope of the Jewish people is that they are still there. Again and again and again, all their stories. We didn't run out of oil, that's Hanukkah. Looked really bad. You have Passover. We were spared from the plagues that I'm just talking about. Again and again and again and again, it's that they get to celebrate being still there. And getting to prove through their righteousness and their faith and their willingness to do the work that they're worthy of the promised land that's always been promised. And so I think that this is an opportunity for Canada. I watched all through the last 5 years this bouncing back and forth where America takes the lead fighting back against COVID tyranny, then we stall, and all of a sudden there's these truckers inspiring the hell out of it. Operation Castle gets back off the couch, and then you guys get your bank accounts crushed, and America steps up to the plate, and it goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I think it's a time where Canada's going to have an opportunity, or the Conservatives here, or just normal people actually too, here in Canada are going to have an opportunity to stand up and be world leaders in getting rid of this evil global plot to enslave us all with communism and put us under the thumb of China for the Asia century that they planned out for us so that we can all get brought under their rule. And so, special role, special job. I don't know how easy it's going to be. I don't particularly want Canada to be a 51st state. I want Canada to be Canada, actually. Like, make Canada Canada again. Sounds so good to me. I said so from the beginning. So I hope that that's what you can do, and I'm honored to get to come out here to, I guess what I heard is the dark heart of Canada, the wokest place ever. Met no woke people, by the way, just your people in the bike lanes, not so nice. Not so good. But I thank you very much for letting me come here and tell you this, but I think that you should remember these stories. These stories of the long suffering of other people who through faithfulness and righteousness were able to take and do the thing that they had to do in order to get to a better place. And not forget that. Put that at the core of what you do. And the bridge between faith and works, because they say if you're a Christian, faith without works is dead. The bridge between faith and works is courage. And courage, proof of faith, so it felt. That's what people should think, so let's create it. And I will close with that. Thank you for bringing it.